But damn, Caitlin Clark tried her best to single-handedly save Stefanie White's sorry A. I'm just keeping it real. Boy, I mean, just go on. Caitlin Clark knocked down two threes. Stefanie White benched her. She benched her, and guess what? The Washington Mystics were off to the races. Off to the races. By the way, we'd love to see some pick and roll. Doesn't matter now. Aliyah Boston's hurt. She's out. For how long, we don't know. And the glaring weakness of no...
The official paperwork was submitted before the players even left the locker room. Stefanie White is officially out after a masterful defensive display by the Washington Mystics left the Indiana Fever completely desperate for answers. This entire experiment has completely fallen apart. No one anticipated her stepping down quite this quickly. But when your franchise superstar drops 32 points and you still lose because your defense is like a sieve, there is absolutely nowhere left to hide. The internal tension behind the scenes had reached a massive breaking point that no amount of deep three-pointers could ever fix. This wasn't merely a defeat on the scoreboard. It was the definitive end for a coaching era that never truly grasped how to utilize the ultimate weapon they had in Caitlin Clark. The entire league is in absolute shock right now. And the 2024 version of Caitlin Clark is truly something special.
Absolutely still exist. We saw it tonight. It was fun. She tried to pull this team up after it was getting dominated by the Mystics. Second, third quarter, domination by the Mystics. Stefanie White had no answers. Look at this. Second quarter. Look at this. 28-21 is where we was at headed into the second. 20-9 in the second quarter.
This was supposed to be the moment the Fever finally protected their home court, but it turned into an absolute disaster instead. You are listening to the unfiltered truth of sports, where we never hold back. The Mystics rolled into Indiana and played like they owned the arena, exposing every single weakness in Stefanie White's defensive schemes. We are looking at a roster that seemed entirely lost during the second and third quarters, while their coach just stood on the sidelines with absolutely no adjustments. Caitlin Clark gave everything she had to single-handedly rescue White's job tonight. But even a once-in-a-generation talent has her limits when the entire system around her is fundamentally broken. The terrible news is officially out, and the consequences are going to be massive for this entire organization.
There's some key easy layups in this game. Guys, this Stefanie White experiment, do not let anybody blow smoke up your ass. It's not going to work. And I saw somebody say, you know, last year's playoff run might have been actually long-term not so great. Because guess what? Guess who started sniffing her own farts? Guess who subscribed to the...
The most confusing moment of the whole night took place right as Caitlin Clark was heating up. She drained 2 massive consecutive three-pointers. The arena was going wild, and the momentum was finally turning back toward Indiana. Then, in a decision that left every commentator in the building completely shocked, Stefanie White sent her to the bench. She took her best player off the court right in the middle of a hot streak. Predictably, the Washington Mystics grabbed that opportunity and completely took over. They went on a huge run the exact moment Clark sat down. You truly cannot make this stuff up. It was a massive coaching failure at the highest level, showing a total lack of game awareness that ultimately forced this unavoidable parting of ways.
Might have been actually long-term not so great. Because guess what? Guess who started sniffing her own farts? Guess who subscribed to the, oh, we're better off without Caitlin Clark. Kelsey Mitchell can single-handedly carry us. No. You've got to have... Caitlin Clark had to go berserk tonight for them to even be competitive at the end of this game. She had to go berserk. She said, to hell with the coaching.
Washington brought a level of physical play that the Fever simply couldn't handle, exposing a massive flaw in the construction of this roster. There is a glaring lack of height and interior defense right now, and the Mystics took advantage of it on every single possession. They attacked the basket relentlessly, as the duo of Shakira Austin and Aaliyah Edwards completely dominated the paint. They were powerful, aggressive, and unstoppable, while Indiana was desperately trying to establish any kind of flow. Washington was systematically destroying them down low. It was completely obvious from the opening tip-off that the Fever were physically outmatched, and the coaching staff had no strategy to fix that size mismatch. It turned into a very long night for anyone wearing a Fever uniform.
She said, to hell with the coaching. I'm going to take over this game myself. And by the way, the lack of pick and roll is still just egregious. It's egregious. Oh, and on top of everything else, you've played 2 home games and you've lost them both. Home games don't grow on trees, folks. Caitlin Clark just put on one of the greatest fourth quarter performances in WNBA history to carry her team to over.
To make matters even worse, the injury bug struck at the absolute worst moment. Aliyah Boston went down, and the sudden silence in the building was deafening. We still don't know how long she will be sidelined, but her absence created a massive hole in the middle that the Mystics were thrilled to exploit. Without Boston on the floor, the Fever's defense completely fell apart. It was like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. The lack of roster depth on this team is alarming, and when your starting center goes down, you expect the head coach to modify the game plan. Instead, we witnessed the exact same stagnant offenses that have hurt this team all year long. It was truly the beginning of the end for this coaching staff.
Both. Home games don't grow on trees, folks. Caitlin Clark just put on one of the greatest fourth quarter performances in WNBA history to carry her team to overtime. She was 5 of 7 from three-point range for 17 points in 9 minutes. Berserk. By the way, Stefanie White still benched her a couple of times at some very strange moments. Very strange moments. I got to tell you.
The second quarter was a complete catastrophe that effectively decided the outcome before halftime. The Fever were outscored 20-9 during a 10-minute stretch that felt like it would never end. Stefanie White looked completely helpless as the Mystics tore her defensive schemes to shreds. This wasn't just about missing open shots, it was a complete failure to execute fundamental basketball principles. The Mystics were getting any shot they wanted, while Indiana looked like a group that had never shared a court together before. Going into the break, the score perfectly reflected 2 teams moving in completely opposite directions. One side was guided by a clear identity, while the other was simply praying that Caitlin Clark would rescue them. No logo threes could save them tonight, folks.
It was the most excited I have been since 2024 for one of these games. One of these games. Even my guy Whitlock had to say, oh, the thrill's back. It was back. Look at that pass. I mean, Caitlin with that pass to Kelsey, holy smokes. I mean, it was fire. Here we go again. Right here. Let's go. Down the court. I mean, here we go.
In the third quarter, the dominance rolled on with Washington taking the period 26-21. Every single time Indiana attempted to put a small run together, the Mystics answered right back. The tandem of Stefanie Dolson and Aaliyah Edwards was playing at a completely elite level. Dolson wrapped up the night with 30 points, while Edwards delivered a massive 25 points alongside 13 rebounds. People love to talk about other high-profile rookies in this league, but Edwards is exactly what everyone claims those other players are. She was an absolute force on the boards and shot an efficient 11 of 17 from the floor. She acted as the anchor that prevented the Fever from ever building real momentum until the final whistle.
Stefanie White truthers. This is not it. You know, I did see somebody say something. Stefanie White may be a great coach. she may not be a great coach for Caitlin Clark. That world could actually exist. It was like we got to the fourth quarter, and it was like Christy Sides was on the side again. Just Christy Sides was just like, you go do your thing.
Then the fourth quarter arrived, and we finally saw the version of Caitlin Clark that captured the world's attention back in Iowa. She went absolutely unconscious on the floor. It was easily one of the most spectacular fourth-quarter displays in WNBA history, and she nearly pulled off a miracle. Clark put the entire franchise on her back and dragged them straight into overtime. She hit 5 of 7 shots from beyond the arc in the final 9 minutes, racking up 17 points in that brief window alone. It was pure, unfiltered greatness. She essentially decided to forget about the coaching and the broken plays. She was going to dominate the game entirely on her own. It was the most thrilled the fan base has been all year, but even that spectacular effort wasn't quite enough. Clark's final stat line looked like something straight out of a video game. She racked up 32 points, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. She ultimately found her shooting stroke from deep, draining 7 of 17 from three-point range. We witnessed those signature logo threes, the fast break pull-ups, and the world-class passing that makes her a once-in-a-lifetime talent. Even critics like Jason Whitlock had to confess that the excitement was officially back. She was knocking them down from way downtown and dropping brilliant passes to her teammates that should have been effortless baskets. But the reality that she had to play this hard just to keep the game competitive tells you everything you need to know about her supporting cast and the coaching staff. Kelsey Mitchell chipped in 24 points, but when the game shifted to overtime, she completely vanished. She missed crucial layups and looked frozen when the pressure reached its peak. This is the exact issue when you have players who start buying into their own media praise. There has been a ridiculous narrative circulating that the squad might actually play better without Clark, or that other veterans can carry the load by themselves. Tonight proved that entire theory is a complete joke. Without Clark going on that historic run in the fourth quarter, this game would have ended as a 30-point blowout. The egos in that locker room desperately need a reality check, and it begins with recognizing who the true engine of this team is. The complete lack of a fundamental pick-and-roll system in this offense is absolutely shocking. We are watching one of the greatest screen-and-roll players in basketball history, yet the coaching staff completely refuses to use it properly. It is the equivalent of owning a luxury sports car and never shifting out of second gear. Stefanie White might be an excellent coach in a completely different system, but she is clearly the wrong match for Caitlin Clark. Some leaders simply aren't meant to guide specific types of talent. Last season's playoff appearance might have actually been a curse in disguise because it gave management a completely false sense of security. They mistakenly believed they were much closer to a championship than they truly were. Dropping 2 consecutive home games is completely unacceptable for a franchise with this much national attention. Home victories are precious, and you have to defend your own court if you expect to be taken seriously. The Mystics head coach didn't just walk away with a win. He completely outclassed White in the second and third quarters. He had his roster fully prepared for every single look Indiana attempted, while the Fever looked like they were just improvising on every possession. It was like watching a grandmaster play chess against someone playing basic checkers. The massive gap in tactical preparation was so overwhelming that the game felt over long before the final buzzer sounded in overtime. The rumors regarding her resignation began spreading the exact moment the game ended. The body language along the sidelines told a story that didn't require any words. White looked completely broken, and the players looked incredibly frustrated with the total lack of guidance. You cannot possess a superstar of Clark's caliber and repeatedly fail to put her in a position to win. When a coach benches her star player during her hottest shooting stretch of the night, all trust is completely lost. Once that trust disappears, there is absolutely no fixing it. The front office was forced to make a drastic change, or they risked losing the fans and the locker room for good. The outside pressure simply became too intense. Let's focus specifically on the defensive breakdowns, because that is exactly where this game was thrown away. The Mystics were permitted to shoot incredible percentages and control the interior without facing any real resistance. There was zero rim protection, no weak side help, and absolutely no communication on the perimeter. It resembled a basic layup drill for Washington during massive portions of the game. If you cannot contain a team like the Mystics on your home floor, who can you actually stop? The defensive identity of this roster is completely non-existent, and that blame rests squarely on the shoulders of this coaching staff. You can feature all the scoring talent in the world, but if you allow an opposing center to score 30 points, you are going to lose the game. Caitlin Clark's incredible night was a double-edged sword for Stefanie White. On one hand, it kept them within striking distance. On the other hand, it revealed exactly how much the head coach was limiting this group. When Clark broke script and started playing her own brand of basketball in the fourth, the team looked completely unstoppable. Yet when they ran White's set plays in the second quarter, they could barely manage a measly 9 points. That difference was so incredibly sharp it was impossible to miss. It felt as though Christy Sides was back running the sidelines, giving fans terrible flashbacks to a style of play that simply does not work with the current talent on this roster. The social media backlash has been incredibly brutal for the Stefanie White defenders. People have been trying to make excuses and pretend this partnership was going to succeed, but the actual results are right there on the scoreboard. You simply cannot look past 2 straight home defeats and a complete lack of progress from the rest of the roster. The comments posted tonight are going to be incredibly difficult to read for anyone still trying to defend this leadership. Fans are completely done with excuses and tired of watching a generational icon wasted in an offensive system that feels like it belongs in the 1990s. The landscape shifted tonight, and the Fever organization was forced to adjust immediately. It is a pretty sad state of affairs when your star player essentially has to save the coach's job just to keep things afloat. That is exactly how much Clark bailed her out this evening. If Clark doesn't unleash that historic performance, White is likely dismissed right on the spot. By stepping down, she at least gets to exit with her dignity intact before the inevitable firing actually arrived. The simple truth is that this team desperately needs a leader who knows how to build around a high-usage, high-IQ playmaker. They require someone who embraces the massive media spotlight and understands how to handle the big egos that come with a high-profile rebuild. The Mystics deserve an incredible amount of credit for their tactical approach. They knew exactly how to disrupt Clark early in the game by playing an intensely physical style and forcing her into difficult looks, but once she figured them out, they had absolutely no answer for her deep range. They were incredibly fortunate that the Fever's own coaching staff did the heavy lifting for them by sitting Clark down at crucial points in the game. It is incredibly rare to see an opposing coach handed a gift like that in professional sports. Washington capitalized on every single error, every bad substitution, and every missed defensive coverage. They executed like an experienced group that knew exactly how to break down a young, unfocused opponent. Looking forward, the Fever have some massive organizational decisions to make. With Aliyah Boston's health completely up in the air and a sudden coaching vacancy to fill, their season is at a massive turning point. Do they double down on another defensive-minded leader? Or do they finally hire someone who will allow Caitlin Clark to be the superhero she was tonight? The fans have made their desires incredibly clear. They want to see the thrilling, fast-paced style of basketball that arrived in the fourth quarter, not the painful grind they watched through the first 3 periods. This next coaching hire will completely define the Caitlin Clark era in Indiana, and they absolutely cannot afford to get it wrong a second time. The silver lining in all of this is that we now know for an absolute fact that the 2024 version of Caitlin Clark is still very much there. She hasn't lost her incredible touch. Watching her sprint down the hardwood and pull up from the logo was easily the most electric moment of the entire season so far. It served as a powerful reminder to everyone why she remains the most talked about athlete on the planet right now. She possesses the unique ability to completely flip a basketball game in a matter of moments. If she can finally secure a coach who truly believes in her style and a front office that can assemble some basic defensive help, the potential for this franchise is limitless. But tonight was a harsh reminder of just how far they still have to go. The massive divide between possessing a lone superstar and building a true championship roster is a massive canyon. You need far more than just a single player. You need an established system, a winning culture, and a coaching staff that understands how to cross the finish line. The Mystics demonstrated exactly what a connected team looks like, even without the same level of star power that Indiana possesses. They played hard for one another, executed their specific roles perfectly, and didn't panic when Clark began her late-game magic. That is the exact standard the Fever need to reach, but they will never achieve it under the previous leadership structure. Stefanie White's exit signals the conclusion of a very brief and incredibly confusing chapter. It was a stretch defined by baffling player rotations, a complete lack of team identity, and a total failure to take advantage of the biggest wave of attention in WNBA history. This experiment is officially over, and while it concluded with a resignation rather than a championship trophy, it offers the franchise an entirely fresh start. They now have an opportunity to hit the reset button, re-examine their roster pieces, and locate a leader who can actually handle the immense pressure of coaching a global icon. The eyes of the entire sports world are fixed on Indiana, and they simply cannot afford another misstep. In the end, Caitlin Clark's sheer brilliance was both the absolute highlight of the game and the spark for the change that desperately needed to happen. She proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she can overcome elite defenses, but she shouldn't have to battle her own coaching staff at the same time. The excitement is officially back, the energy is incredibly high, and the future remains incredibly bright, but only if the proper pieces are put into place moving forward. Make sure you stay locked in as this massive story continues to unfold, because the aftermath of tonight's events is truly just getting started. The Fever are searching for a brand new path, and the world is waiting to see exactly who will take over the controls of the Caitlin Clark Show.